What if the most powerful weapon in modern politics wasn't a missile or a law, but a prison? Not just any prison, a fortress buried deep in the Everglades, surrounded by swamps, alligators, and silence. A place so isolated that even hope needs authorization to enter. They call it Alligator Alcatraz, and it's not just a name. It's a message. This is Trump's vision for punishment, brutal, symbolic, and meticulously designed to make fear a permanent resident. As the debate over immigration explodes across the U.S., a new kind of detention center is being born, funded by a record-breaking $150 billion bill, backed by contracts with private prison giants, and hidden in one of the most unforgiving terrains in America. But what makes this facility different isn't just the surveillance or the electrified fences. It's the ideology behind it. Because this blueprint isn't just about containment. It's about redefining who deserves to walk free, and who must pay a price beyond their sentence. What you're about to uncover might disturb you, or it might confirm everything you suspected about where the world is heading. Either way, it's impossible to look away. From the psychological warfare encoded in its architecture, to the eerie parallels with Guantanamo and the ghost of Alcatraz rising again, Alligator Alcatraz is more than a detention center. It's the physical embodiment of a political promise, to punish without apology. As we step inside this labyrinth of ideology and intimidation, one question echoes louder than ever. Is this the future of justice, or just a rehearsal for something darker? The next scene will reveal what most were never meant to see. And as we descend deeper into this vision, where punishment becomes more than a sentence, more than a policy, something far more symbolic begins to take shape. This prison isn't just a facility, it's a message. It tells you what a nation chooses to fear, what it's willing to erase in the name of control, and how far it's ready to go to preserve a certain illusion of order. Alligator Alcatraz isn't meant to be hidden. It's meant to be felt. The swamp, the gators, the isolation. It's not just logistics, it's theater. Every locked cell, every silent corridor, every fluorescent light burning 24/7 says the same thing. This is what power looks like when it stops pretending. If this idea resonates with you, if it challenges, confirms, or even unsettles what you thought about justice, leave a comment. Tell me what struck you the most. Sometimes, one sentence shared in this space becomes the beginning of a larger conversation. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read right now. And if this video has already made you pause for a moment, tap the like button. It's a quiet signal that this kind of content matters, that these hidden realities deserve to be seen. Your engagement is what keeps this channel alive, what helps it reach the people who still believe that truth, no matter how dark, should not be silenced. Subscribe now if you want to keep exploring what lies beneath the surface. Because where we're going next, the silence speaks louder than any verdict, and the blueprint of punishment is only beginning to unfold. Imagine blinking, and a machine logging your hesitation as a potential threat. At Alligator Alcatraz, the walls don't just watch, they analyze. In this next-generation blueprint of punishment, every breath you take is a data point, every movement a variable, in a risk algorithm. This prison isn't designed to contain chaos, it's built to translate it. Eye-tracking cameras don't just observe inmates, they interpret focus, distraction, rage. If your pupils dilate during an inspection, it's recorded. If you shift your weight twice in 5 seconds, a silent flag is raised. Anxiety is no longer invisible, it's quantified. Trump's vision for punishment stretches far beyond bars and concrete. It ventures into the realm of predictive control. Every sensor, every wire, every line of code in Alligator Alcatraz has one goal: eliminate the unpredictable. In a system where silence becomes suspicious, Inmates learn to regulate their body language like diplomats walking on diplomatic mines. Even their silence is forced into categories: calm or deceptive, submissive or waiting to strike. The cell no longer confines the body. It scans the soul. But what does this say about transformation? About justice that doesn't trust time, only patterns? In this facility, the concept of rehabilitation becomes almost obsolete. You're not being watched to see if you've changed. You're being studied to predict what you might do next. Behavior isn't forgiven. It's forecasted. The inmates aren't counted. They're processed, profiled, redefined by their own reactions. Welcome to a future where every human error becomes an echo through wires, a risk profile stored indefinitely, where punishment is no longer a sentence. It's a simulation you're forced to repeat. And behind all of this, there's a truth few dare to name. This isn't just a prison, it's a test lab, a prototype, a psychological echo chamber built on the belief that if we can measure someone fully, we can control them completely. Now I want to go even deeper into this reality, into what it means when justice stops listening to confessions and starts scanning your breath instead. Comment below. I see what they're building. If your voice can't be heard, how long until your thoughts forget how to speak? Inside Alligator Alcatraz, contact isn't a right. It's a memory, carefully erased with each regulation, each sealed protocol. Physical presence is seen as contamination. Emotional connection is a liability. Inmates will never again feel the warmth of a child's hand, the breath of a mother's prayer, or even the weight of their own past arriving through a handwritten letter. Communication here is synthetic, filtered through glass and code. One screen per visit, one angle, one sterile exchange of words. No phone calls, no letters, no trace of scent, tone, or touch. Humanity flattened into bandwidth. They call it a measure of safety. They call it a tool to prevent manipulation, to break the cycles of gang control, to sever inmates from networks that could reach beyond the bars. But what they don't say out loud is what this isolation does to the mind, how it digs into memory and pulls out the roots, how over time a person begins to forget the sound of their own name when spoken with love. Isolation builds obedience, one advisor told a reporter. But he didn't say what else it destroys. The silence doesn't just calm, it erases. And in that erasure, something darker grows, because a man who has no one to protect begins to believe he has nothing left to lose. A system that deletes your last human connection doesn't make you docile, it makes you empty. And emptiness is unpredictable. The mind starts to hallucinate companionship. It invents voices, confessions, even arguments just to fill the gap. What happens when punishment stops being a consequence and becomes a vacuum where the human psyche floats, untethered, unseen? There's a kind of psychological warfare happening behind the steel and surveillance, one that doesn't need to raise its voice, just remove all others. Emotional deprivation becomes a strategy. Pain isn't inflicted directly anymore. It's distributed through subtraction. You don't hit the prisoner, you remove their mirror, you don't scream at them. You never let them hear anyone say their name. Slowly, reality becomes too quiet to trust. And when a person can't hear love, can't touch trust, can't even imagine comfort, what kind of identity survives? This is not just incarceration. It's emotional disintegration, administered not through violence, but through distance. And yet behind this design is a deeper truth few are willing to acknowledge. Cutting off connection is easier than reforming it. It's not about rehabilitation. It's about redesigning the soul to live without context. And the more isolated a person becomes, the more their silence is mistaken for peace, when it may in fact be the loudest scream this system has created. Now I want to go even deeper into this reality. to uncover how control doesn't always look like chains, and sometimes the most powerful prisons are built not of walls, but of absence. Comment below. I still believe in human connection. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because the walls of Alligator Alcatraz are not just structures of confinement. They're instruments of psychological design. And in this place, every detail plays a role in reshaping the human mind. Not with violence, but with architecture that manipulates perception. Walk down any corridor and you'll feel it. The absence of natural light is not a flaw. It's policy. There are no windows, no visible skies, no external cues. The sun never reaches these inmates, and when light disappears, so does your internal compass. You don't know if it's morning, afternoon, or eternity. There are no clocks either. Time here doesn't tick, it dissolves. The inmates lose their rhythm, their mental anchors. They wake when told, sleep when allowed. And somewhere in between, they begin to forget the difference between yesterday and the next breath. Even the floors, yes, the floors, are part of this silent manipulation. Slightly sloped forward, just enough to create a subconscious lean, just enough to push every step with a weight you can't explain. You're always being pulled somewhere. But there is nowhere to go. It's subtle. But that's what makes it powerful. This isn't punishment by brute force. It's erosion of the self through design. When the body is always adjusting, the mind starts to slip. Identity gets blurry. Memories feel less like truth and more like stories you once told yourself. That's not rehabilitation. That's disassembly. Not correction, but submission. Every architectural choice in Alligator Alcatraz serves a purpose. To make freedom feel foreign. To make resistance feel exhausting. To make compliance feel like the only thing that still belongs to you. There's a certain genius in it, cold, calculated, and effective. Because a man who doesn't know what day it is can't plan a rebellion. A prisoner who doesn't know if he's walked the same corridor 5 or 50 times can't build a mental map. And someone who forgets how sunlight feels on their skin starts to believe that darkness is normal. This is not a failure of the system. It is the system. Built with the same level of strategic precision as a military operation. Only the target isn't external. It's the soul. And yet the irony echoes through those silent halls. For all the tech, the funding, the walls and guards, the most effective weapon used here isn't fear. It's confusion, constant creeping disorientation. A quiet war waged against orientation itself. No bullets, no screams, just the sound of a man's mind folding into something the system can manage. You can't fight what you don't understand. And when you lose your sense of place, you lose your place in the fight. Write in the comments. They're not just building walls, they're erasing direction. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when architecture breaks the body, the next frontier is the mind. And in Alligator Alcatraz, that battlefield is already active and invisible. Inmates aren't just monitored, they're profiled, scored and categorized by systems that don't sleep, don't blink, and don't forget. Artificial intelligence isn't there to respond to behavior. It's there to predict it. A glance too long, a breath too fast, a moment of silence misread as defiance. The machine doesn't wait for someone to act. It acts first. This is not the future of punishment. It's its automation. And it rewrites a terrifying equation. Guilt is no longer about action. It's about potential. The question isn't, what did you do? But what might you do next? Algorithms decide who is agitated, who is cooperative, who is a threat. These aren't assumptions made by guards walking the halls. These are data-fed, constantly updating verdicts generated by systems trained to quantify the unquantifiable: fear, rage, hesitation, loyalty. In this prison, decisions are made by math. Behavior scores rank each inmate. Those with higher compliance scores may eat earlier. Others walk in isolation. Some find privileges vanish without explanation. No appeal, no dialogue, just a change in digital status. Imagine trying to survive in a place where the machine that judges you doesn't speak your language, doesn't care about your story, and cannot be persuaded. Where every move feeds a system that knows more about your patterns than you ever could. That's the structure Trump's blueprint sets in motion. Not just walls and fences, but a network of preemptive control. This is not innocent until proven guilty. This is scored before allowed to breathe. And the most disturbing part? Many believe it works. They see efficiency, order, predictability. But at what cost? When obedience is engineered by fear of prediction, choice vanishes. You're not following rules. You're dodging ghosts the system claims it saw in you. It raises urgent questions. Who built these systems? Who programmed the definitions of threat and compliance? Can biases be coded into lines of logic? What happens when an inmate is trapped not by bars, but by an invisible equation that redefines his identity every time a new data set is processed? There are no fingerprints on this kind of punishment. No clear villain. Just circuits and numbers and silent verdicts that no human ever signed. This isn't just incarceration. It's data-driven destiny. It's the surrender of human judgment to something colder, something that can't be reasoned with. And in that surrender, we lose something vital, the space between action and reaction. The possibility of change. The recognition that people are more than what they might do under pressure. In Alligator Alcatraz, potential rebellion is punished before it becomes real. And that means redemption never gets the chance to begin. Write in the comments, they punish what I haven't even done. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because what begins as surveillance soon turns into servitude. In Alligator Alcatraz, punishment isn't only about restriction, it's about redefinition. Once you're behind those walls, you're not just an inmate. You're a resource, a function, a body to be optimized, and the labor, it returns, not as rehabilitation, not as a chance for dignity, but as the purest symbol of submission. The message is clear. You exist to obey, and through obedience, you produce. There's no paycheck, no purpose beyond demonstrating compliance. Prison labor in this blueprint isn't voluntary. It's coded into the very structure of the sentence. Whether you're assembling parts, maintaining the grounds, or cleaning the same corridors that erase your sense of time, every task is designed not to build skill, but to break identity. You're contributing to systems you'll never benefit from, infrastructures you'll never access. Your hands shape a world you'll never touch. That's not reform, that's psychological erasure. What's more chilling is the branding of this process. They don't call it forced labor. They call it opportunity, a structured routine, a mental stabilizer. Bureaucratic. Language transforms exploitation into wellness. But if you listen closely, you'll notice the shift in vocabulary hides a far more uncomfortable truth. This is obedience disguised as contribution. The labor becomes a metric. If you resist it, your behavior score drops. If you comply, you're considered stable, even if the work slowly depletes what's left of your autonomy. And what are these inmates building? Surveillance components, fencing materials, maintenance units for detention centers across the country. There's a cruel symmetry in it, constructing the very walls that may one day confine someone just like you, or your child, or someone who simply fit the wrong profile on the wrong day. It's not punishment as consequence, it's punishment as a cycle, self-sustaining, silent, and justified through productivity. They'll argue this is efficient, that it reduces costs, that it teaches routine and discipline. But look closer and you'll see the pattern. Every movement is optimized for output. Every effort serves the system. And slowly, the lines blur. When obedience becomes currency and labor becomes a test of worthiness, humanity slips quietly out the back door. This isn't about justice anymore. It's about transformation, but not the kind that heals. The kind that converts a person into a unit of function. The deeper danger lies in how normal it starts to look. The absence of protest, the mechanical smiles, the silence during shift changes. When punishment takes the shape of productivity, it no longer looks like cruelty. It looks like order. And that illusion is what allows it to grow unchecked. Because it's harder to fight something that doesn't look like punishment. Something that feels like work, but smells like control. Something that calls itself opportunity, but wears the face of exploitation. Write in the comments, they turned punishment into routine. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what we're dealing with here is no longer just a facility. It's a symbol, a towering monument to the idea that punishment isn't just response, it's strategy. Alligator Alcatraz wasn't designed only to contain people. It was engineered to communicate something powerful, something intentional. And if you know how to read beneath the surface, the message becomes clear. Obedience is survival. Resistance is design flaw. Trump's inner circle refers to it proudly, a monument to consequence. But monuments aren't built for the people who live inside them. They're built for those who look from a distance. They shape perception. They write narratives without needing to explain. The steel walls, the biometric gates, the AI behavior monitors. None of it is just function. It's symbolic infrastructure. The idea is to make punishment feel righteous, inevitable, and even beautiful to those watching from the outside. Press releases talk about safety, about deterrence, about returning control to the nation. But underneath the polished statements lies the blueprint of a far more strategic transformation. You're not just seeing a prison being built. You're seeing an idea being institutionalized. That surveillance, obedience, and labor can coexist under one justified label: justice. And when justice is defined by architecture, the lines between fear and order begin to dissolve. Supporters call it necessary. They see a system that finally works. But critics, those who've walked through the echoing corridors, who've spoken to those inside, who've felt the weight of engineered silence, they see it differently. They don't see cells. They see scenes. Every corridor a broadcast. Every camera a narrative tool. Every silence a message. This isn't correctional. It's theatrical. A performance of discipline for a nation that's grown used to watching control on repeat. And that's where the real shift begins. Punishment as performance. You're no longer just punishing the inmate. You're training the observer, teaching what's acceptable, what's dangerous, and who fits into which category. It's not about guilt anymore. It's about predictability. And predictability is what builds mass obedience, not through force, but through normalization. So what happens when this model becomes exportable? When states start to replicate its efficiency, when private contractors realize the margins in predictive punishment, Alligator Alcatraz stops being an outlier and becomes a standard, a prototype, and eventually, a precedent. This is what happens when architecture, narrative, and political strategy merge into one. A place where every wall reinforces the same idea. Resistance will be structured out of you. Write in the comments. This isn't just a prison, it's a message. If you've made it all the way here, then you already understand this isn't just about prisons. It's about the kind of world that's being shaped, quietly, deliberately, and one decision at a time. And if something in this story made you pause, reflect, or feel a shift inside, then stay close. This channel exists for a reason, to reveal what's usually hidden in plain sight. So take a moment, hit the like button, not just for the algorithm, but to remind the system that minds like yours are still paying attention. Subscribe if you want to keep walking this line of thought, where punishment isn't just what follows a mistake, but something designed to begin long before it. And if you're still here now, leave a comment saying, "Punishment shapes the future." That single phrase says more than enough. There's a video right here that continues the journey, where punishment takes on a new face, but the silence behind it feels hauntingly familiar. Click it, and let's keep going.